Hi, fourth grade, and welcome back to Math Mr. G. Today is Zearn Lesson 7, but before we get started with our Zearn lesson, I want to go over one of the word problems from yesterday's exit ticket. So right now, if you could please just grab a whiteboard, a marker, pencil, paper, anything that you have to just go over this work with me, so that when you see these kind of problems in the future, you guys have a good idea of what to do because you've practiced it. So you can see here, this is the gallon and quart word problem from yesterday's exit ticket. As usual, I have us set up in a way that helps organize all the information that we need, as well as the objective that we're working with. So you can see here in the top corner, we have our standard and objective. So still, we're continuing to work on solving problems involving measurement and conversion of measurements, and this is for MDA1. We'll be continuing with this standard and objective for a long while as we get more and more comfortable with the different kinds of conversions and the different ways that we can convert and solve real-world problems like the one that we have here. Okay, if you have your pencil and paper ready, we're going to start working with this now. So the word problem reads, Jason poured 1 gallon, 1 quart of water into an empty 2-gallon bucket. How much more water can be added to reach the bucket's 2-gallon capacity? Okay, when I was thinking about this before I even started working on the word problem, I drew myself a picture. I drew myself a picture of a bucket, okay? So I'm going to do that right down here in the bottom. I have a bucket. It's not going to be a very pretty bucket, but it'll get the job done. So let's say this is my bucket here. And at the very top, this can fit a total of 2 gallons, right? I know that Jason poured, so he put in 1 gallon of 1 quart. Well, I know 1 gallon's about half, and 1 quart's a little over. So I'm going to draw kind of just like a dotted line here. This is where we're at right now. Okay, this is 1 gallon and 1 quart. The reason I'm drawing this picture and labeling it is because when I'm trying to think of real-world scenarios, I oftentimes get kind of stuck in the words or in the numbers in the word problem, and it gives me kind of, a difficult time with imagining how this is really working. So I like to draw pictures. And this really helps me identify what needs to be done because I need to find how much more water can be added to reach the bucket's 2-gallon capacity. So capacity means how much is in there. So I have to find, got my blue here, so let's say this is all the water that's in there, right? I have to find how much more water I need to fill in the rest of this here. So I know I'm going to be finding a difference, which probably means I'm going to be subtracting. So after I've drawn my picture here, I'm going to look and see that I have my conversion. Yep, I've got my conversion here. I'm converting gallons into quarts. And I also probably need to be converting quarts to gallons at some point. So I'm going to be putting that in just above it as well. That will let me type. There we go. All right, so quarts to gallons, I need to divide by 4. Okay. All right, so now that I've done that, I can start looking into my word problem here and using my cube method. So first, I'm going to use my blue here. I need to circle important numbers. So Jason poured 1 gallon and 1 quart of water. So I've got 1 gallon and 1 quart into an empty 2-gallon bucket. Yep. How much more water can be added to reach the bucket's 2-gallon capacity? So again, my 2 gallons. So next, I need to underline the question I need to answer. I'm going to do this with my red. I found my question mark. I need to know how much more water can be added to reach the bucket's 2-gallon capacity. Good. Next, I'm going to use my black. Oh, sorry, red cross off. I'm going to use my black. I need to box my key math words. So again, key math words are anything that shows the units we're using for measurement and anything that might tell us the operations that we need to use to solve this. So Jason poured 1 gallon, there's a measurement, and 1 quart of water into an empty 2-gallon bucket. How much more oftentimes tells me that I'm adding or subtracting. I need to know how much can be added. Okay, this gives me a good idea that I might be adding or subtracting here. Added doesn't necessarily always mean that you're necessarily going to be adding, but the word added might also mean that we're subtracting. You might need to be finding the difference to find how much is being added. For instance, here, we need to know how much needs added here. We need to find the number that needs to be added here to solve this. Doesn't mean that we're going to add 1 gallon to 2 gallons, because then we'd have a total of 3 gallons, which is way too much up here. So I know more and added tell me I'm probably adding or subtracting. Okay. Now I need to evaluate and eliminate unnecessary information. So Jason poured, yeah, I don't need to know that. Into an empty, yeah. So just that first part there. Okay, now I need to solve and show my work. Okay, like I just said before and a couple times before, we need to find the difference here. We need to find what we're missing in this bucket. And the best way to do this is to subtract, to find the difference. And again, our box words here, even though they say more and added, don't mean we're adding here. Because after drawing this picture, we can see that if we add 2 gallons to 1 gallon, we're going to be at 3 gallons at least. And we're going to be way up here. So we're going to subtract. And the best way to subtract these is to put them over each other to make a vertical operation. So 2 gallons on top. And the trick with doing these is to make sure that your units line up. I don't want gallons to be over quarts. I want gallons to be over gallons. One QT, 1 quart. And like I said, we're finding a difference, which means we are subtracting. Okay. Now here's the problem. Just like when you solve any kind of subtraction problem, if you have a 0, which we essentially have here with this blank, you can't take anything away from it because you have nothing. So you have to borrow. The trick with borrowing with conversion is that when you borrow, you're not borrowing just 1. You have to borrow 1 gallon's worth of things. So watch what I mean. So if I'm going to borrow from 2 gallons, I have to borrow 1 gallon. I can't just borrow 1 quart from this. I have to borrow a whole gallon's worth of quarts. So I'm going to cross this off. I have 1 gallon left. I'm bringing over 1 gallon's worth, but I'm not going to write 1 gallon here. I need to know how many quarts are in a gallon. Well, let's see. Quarts to gallons, I need to divide by 4, and gallons to quarts, I need to multiply by 4. Okay, if I know I have 1 gallon, and I'm bringing it over, I need to multiply times 4. So that gives me 4 quarts. Okay, now I can solve. Now I can solve very easily and very smoothly. So I'm going to bring my units down. Still working with quarts here. 4 minus 1 is 3. 1 minus 1 is 0. So 0 gallons, I'm not even going to bother writing anything in here because my answer is going to be 3 quarts. This is what needs to be added here. There's 3 quarts that is missing. And if I want to double check my work, which I'm going to do right now, there's a very simple way to do that. So let me zoom out really quick and move our work. I'm going to do my work down here in the bottom. Now I can add this to make sure that works. So I'm going to add 3 quarts . 3 quarts written. I'm going to now put 1 gallon and 1 quart over the top of it so I can check my work. Okay, 1 quart plus 3 quarts is 4 quarts. Let's make this Q a little more like a Q. And then bring down my 1 gallon. Okay, Mr. G, I'm looking for 2 gallons here, but all I see is 1 gallon and 4 quarts. Well, I can convert these 4 quarts now into gallons by moving them over. So if I look, I need to turn quarts into gallons by dividing by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. So 4 quarts is really equal to 1 gallon. I can add that to my gallon that I already have, and I really end up here with 2 gallons, which is exactly what we needed because that was the capacity for our bucket over here. Now, this is kind of a new way for us to solve conversions and a way for us to use addition, subtraction in a way that's kind of unfamiliar to us with those units. The more we do these, the more accessible and the more easy it will be for you guys to work with. Today on Zearn Lesson 7, you're going to be working more and more with these, especially with inches, feet, and yards. The key here is to really use your conversion charts to solve and to rewatch some of those Zearn videos if you get stuck. If you get stuck, for instance, on the Tower of Power, I want you to go back and rewatch some of the videos and check your work, because that Tower of Power is set up to look just like the work you're doing in Zearn. I will, again, of course, post the exit ticket, and we'll go over one of the word problems next time. Have a good day.